The Dick Morris Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Hi, welcome to the Dick Morris and Doug DePiro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group.
Good morning, Dick Morris.
Good morning. So, the president of Colombia, the country, not the college, walked out.
They're one and the same almost.
Walked out of the United Nations on Friday and delivered a statement calling on the U.S. military to disobey President Trump and to turn their guns against the army.
Unbelievable. Against Trump.
Well, against Trump and the U.S. military.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Totally unbelievable.
No, didn't he say he wanted the U.S. military to turn on Trump?
Yeah.
That's horrible.
That's why from New York I ask all soldiers in the United States Army not to point their rifles at humanity. Disobey Trump's orders. Obey the order of humanity, Petro said. Petro was in New York for the UN General Assembly, where he rebuked the Trump administration fiercely and called for a criminal inquiry into the recent U.S. strikes on drug trafficking boats in the Caribbean.
Yeah, he said more than a dozen in total, people were killed. Poor young people. They had drugs on their boat. They were transferring or shipping drugs to the U.S., and poor people, 12 of them.
So Trump has dispatched 8 warships and a submarine to the southern Caribbean, and in the biggest U.S. deployment in years. And they're afraid that we might actually invade Venezuela.
You know, Dick,
to topple Maduro.
We talked about this earlier when we got this topic together. Here's the problem. Petro is scared of the cartels. So Trump blew up the cartel. That's the ship that had all the drugs. And he's not scared of Trump, obviously, but he better be. But he's worried that when he goes home, that if he didn't say this, the cartels are going to be like, what are you doing? This guy's going to destroy our business.
Right.
He's probably in on it. And now he's at home, he feels safe. But he's not going to feel very safe with Trump around, saying that kind of, having that kind of rhetoric.
He's running for re-election in 2026.
Petro is.
Petro.
Uh-huh.
And disclaimer, Doug and I are probably going to work in the campaign against him.
You had to tell him that now?
Yeah. We're waiting. So give me my address and zip code and everything else.
Well, I have a full carrier, so I'm okay for now.
But this was outrageous. He was on U.S. territory. He walked out of the UN and stood there on 49th Street.
How dare!
And York Avenue, and called on U.S. troops to disobey Trump and not turn their guns on humanity, as he put it.
You know why, Dick? Part of this is that there's so many liberal morons out there in New York, Americans, that would look at him and say, oh, he's right, because they already hate Trump. They hate the U.S. They hate the government. So he actually is speaking to some people. Like, I look at it and I think to myself, how is this guy? How could he possibly say this? But he can, because probably 49% of the people listen to him like, well, he's right.
No, what's going on here is that Trump has basically changed the Latin American issues into the anti-drug issue, into drug trafficking. And he's taken the two regimes that are most Marxist and most leftist and most crazy,
right,
in Colombia and Venezuela, and he's attacking them as leading the drug cartel, and they are. They make their living selling drugs, and they use their power to try to secure their political position in their countries. And Trump is using the U.S. military to stop this. And it's not just a question of individual DEA agents, but actually of armed forces sinking the boats that the cartel is using
to come to us,
come to the U.S.
Right?
Yeah.
If you're not coming to us, I'm not sinking the ship. Go somewhere else.
Right.
You come to me. Bye bye.
And Petro, the president of Colombia, is protesting that, and it's opening it's a huge new issue in Latin America. And literally, Petro, the president of Colombia, called on the American military to disobey the orders of President Trump and not to point their guns at humanity, as he called them.
Oh, my God. You know, this is why we need Luis Rosales, our Latin American guy, and Mercedes Schlapp on the team to go into Latin America and do what we want to do.
Yeah.
This is important. Talk about that, Dick, that we're working on a lot of different
Well, we're working
campaigns.
with Trump on appointing a woman named Mercedes Schlapp.
Everybody knows her.
Whose husband and
Matt Schlapp.
and Mercedes run CPAC. And she is considering entering the Trump administration as a point person on Latin America. And to deal with the left-wing communist regimes there. The communists, basically, the ultra-leftists, are now in control in Chile, Peru, Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela,
Wow.
Uruguay, Nicaragua, Cuba, Guatemala, and Mexico.
My question is, where are they not?
Well, there
Argentina?
10 countries I didn't name. Argentina, Paraguay, and a bunch of others.
Right.
Bolivia.
Mm-hmm.
Bolivia, they're being thrown out now. The elections will be next week, I think.
Honduras, hopefully.
Honduras, yeah, we're working against them. So, but really Latin America is in play. This is no longer just a question of Fidel Castro making a lot of noise or sending Che Guevara out. This is literally the military of these countries backing the drug cartels against the United States. And Trump warned this week, Trump issued a certificate saying that there's a likelihood of armed conflict in the Caribbean because he's not putting up with this. And Petro is responding to that. And that's what the shooting is about.
And this is a big reason why our Hispanic culture here is turning conservative, because they left those countries with all this horror show going on with their governments. Basically that's the Democratic system backfiring.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's true. And they see what communism has done to their countries,
Right.
and they're determined for that not to happen here. Now, while that's going on, Trump is solving the problems of the world. Hamas has now agreed to part of Trump's peace plan for Gaza. The group said it accepted parts of the peace proposal to end its war power over Gaza, and freeing all of the hostages, and pledging not to attack Israel.
The announcement came after Trump gave Hamas until October 5th to accept the deal to end the war. All right, that's today. Accept the deal to end the war and release all the hostages the terrorist groups took on October 7th. Surprise attack on Israel. Trump announced the deadline is in a post on Truth Social. If this last chance agreement is not reached, all hell, like no one has ever seen before, will break out against Hamas. There will be peace in the Middle East, one way or the other. Trump wrote this on his post. As retribution for the October 7th attack on civilization, more than 25,000 Hamas soldiers have already been killed. Most of the rest are surrounded and militarily trapped, just waiting for me to give the word, go, for their lives to be quickly extinguished. As for the rest, we know where you are, and you would be hunted down and killed. That's Trump. He's so awesome.
Meantime, Hamas said welcomed Trump's proposal.
Hamas said. Right.
But sought clarification on certain provisions, adding that it would release all hostages and hand over the bodies of those who died. It also said it's ready to immediately disengage in negotiations through mediators to discuss the various Trump administration elements of the peace plan.
But part of the problems with that is, as we know with Iran and so on, they say, yeah, we're going to agree to this, we'll talk, we'll have, so they could just put it out another month or two. They could
but
stall.
Trump is giving them a couple of hours.
Right, you got a couple of hours, that's right. And he doesn't fool around, it's not a bluff.
Israel proved Trump's plan earlier this week when Netanyahu visited Washington. The deal included Israel's withdrawal to an agreed line, a suspension of all military operations in Gaza, and the release of 250 prisoners serving life sentences in Israel, along with 1,700 Gazans detained after the Hamas attack. Israel will not occupy or annex Gaza, according to the agreement. The peace plan states that when the Palestinian Authority completes its reform program, it could prepare the conditions for a credible pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood. The plan includes de-radicalizing Gaza and making it a terror-free zone so that it doesn't pose a threat in the future. The Gaza Strip will receive full aid when the hostilities end. Both Trump and Netanyahu have made it clear that Hamas will play no role in the governance of Gaza. All military, terror, and offensive infrastructure, including tunnels and weapons production facilities, will be destroyed and not rebuilt. No one will be forced to leave Gaza, and those who wish to leave will be free to do so and free to return. Trump touted his plan during a joint press conference. Working with new transactional authority in Gaza, all parties agreed to a timeline for Israel forces to withdraw in phases. They'll be withdrawing in phases. So if this holds and Hamas, well, we say if Hamas follows through.
Right, that's more like it, right.
But they're destroyed. They're half dead, 2/3 dead. And Trump is literally saying, we'll kill the rest of you and finish the job if you don't agree to this by today.
Yeah, but most of them don't even care about their lives. They don't even care. They're dying for some stupid cause.
They ultimately do. And it's absolutely incredible. Trump has now made peace in Gaza. It has to stick, it has to hold, but he's gotten Hamas to agree to that. And basically the way he did it was that he got all of the Arab countries in the world to oppose Hamas and ultimately support Israel, who most of them don't recognize.
I love that he could do that.
And he did that by manipulating commerce, manipulating money from Qatar and Saudi Arabia and American aid. And he built a global coalition of every country in the world outside of Hamas, opposing Hamas. And by completely isolating them and particularly cutting them off from the funding by Arab regimes in other parts of the Middle East, he forced this agreement. He deserves a great deal of credit for that.
You know, once again, it was almost a good thing that he didn't have the last 4 years as president, because what he did in his first term, they know he's real. Now, 8 years later, whatever it is now, right? They believe him when he says, "Listen, you guys got to get on board," and they believe him. Anyway, now let's talk about this government.
When we get back, do we have time now?
Yeah, we have time. We have 3 minutes.
Okay. The government is officially shut down right now, and the Democrats are demanding the repeal of the Obamacare ban on subsidies for illegal immigrants. The Democrats want to repeal sections of the big, beautiful bill that bars illegal immigrants from receiving federally funded health care.
Unbelievable.
Now, the Democrats are doing everything they can to dress this up and saying, oh, we're fighting for Obamacare.
Yeah, sure.
We're fighting for the subsidies of the premiums. Otherwise, premiums will go way up. But in fact, what's buried in there is a provision that says that this money should be used for illegal immigrants.
You know what I just realized, Dick? Obama's going to need some care soon. Going to jail. He's going to need some real care.
He's not.
Yes, he is. Let's have a bet right now. $5. Put the money on the plate. Put it down right now. $5. He's going to jail. Oh, I'm going to have $5.
Now, Vance says that the reason Schumer is being tough in these negotiations, even though he's ultimately caving in, is that he's afraid AOC, AOC will run against him. He's worried that AOC, Alexandria Olympia-Cortez,
whatever her name is. We'll talk about this when we get back.
Will run against him for the Senate, and he's scared about that, and he's trying to show how tough he is and his moxie in calling for the government to shut down.
This is Chucky Schumann.
Yeah.
We'll talk about this when we get back. We need to take a break.
The Dick Morris Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dick Morris Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Dick Morris and Doug DePiro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group. A brand new era took place, really, in college campuses this week, and it's only just going to begin to take effect. Trump has been faced with the problem of how does he regulate the crazy left on campuses? How does he stop them from anti-Semitism? How does he stop them from beating up Jewish students? And how does he basically change the orientation of these schools? 90+% of the faculty, 95+% of the faculty of these colleges are leftists, and that is indoctrinating a generation of Americans. The problem is that legally his ability to do that is limited by the Constitution and by the fact that these universities are at least partially privately funded and endowed by private funding. But now the Trump administration has come up with a really bold, novel, and new plan to do it voluntarily. Trump this week offered a select group of universities the opportunity to score priority access to federal funding, prompting an enthusiastic and swift response from a university leader in Texas who called it an honor. But other schools that received the 10-page proposal Wednesday are largely silent, and Newsom said he would cut off state funding to any school in California that accepted the Trump proposal. The White House intended to launch a campaign to bring colleges into compliance with Trump's ideological priorities by offering a competitive advantage to those that sign in. The document sent to 9 schools this week was entitled Compact for Academic Excellence in Higher Education, and asked schools to pledge allegiance to conservative values and policies in what appears to be the first step in this campaign. Governor Newsom threatened to yank billions of state aid funding from any school in the state, writing that he will not bankroll schools that sell out their students, professors, researchers, and surrender their academic freedom.
Yeah, that's for sure.
In a letter to selected university presidents, Education Secretary Linda McMahon described the effort as one that would help the next generation grow up into resilient, curious, moral leaders inspired by American Western values.
You mean they could think for themselves?
Yeah. While administration officials cast the agreement as a means to gain advantages for federal funding, some are concerned that they may be penalized for not doing so. A White House official said that the administration does not plan to limit federal funding solely to schools that sign the compact, but would be given priority for grants when possible, as well as invitations to the White House for events and discussions with officials. The compact asks schools to pledge allegiance to conservative values and politics in 8 enumerated areas, that they would promise to prohibit consideration of factors such as race, gender, or political views from being considered for admission, scholarships, or programming. Secondly, they would freeze tuition for 5 years, give free tuition to students attending hard science programs at schools with endowments exceeding $2 million per undergraduate, and refund tuition to undergraduates who drop out during their first term. Maintain institutional neutrality at all levels, ensuring university employees abstain from political speech. Cap international enrollment to 15% of the college's undergraduate student body, with no more than 5% coming from a single country. Basically keep Palestinians out. McMahon, a White House official, May Mailman, and Vincent Haley, the director of the Domestic Policy Council and our close friend, sent letters to the following universities offering the deal: Vanderbilt, University of Pennsylvania, Dartmouth, University of Southern California, MIT, University of Texas at Austin, University of Arizona, Brown University, and the University of Virginia. 2 of the schools, Brown and Penn, had previously negotiated agreements with the White House to restore federal funding the White House had frozen. 1, University of Virginia, had a president resign under pressure from the Trump administration. Some schools, such as Vanderbilt and Dartmouth, have been outspoken about the need to change higher education, largely sympathetic with this program. But the chairman of the University of Texas System Board of Regents said they were honored that their flagship school had been named as one of only 9 institutions in the U.S. selected by Trump for potential funding advantage. We enthusiastically look forward to engaging with university officials and reviewing the compact immediately. He said they've been working closely with state leaders to implement the reform. Brown, Dartmouth, and Penn did not respond to requests for comments, and the remaining schools said they're reviewing the documents. This is a game changer for colleges. This is what Kirk, what we have been urging before his assassination, what Charlie Kirk has been pushing. And this really changes colleges. But we don't have federal authority over them. But by offering this deal of extra funding in return for changing their whole approach, we really can change American colleges.
You know, we got Roxana Maria on the rocks right now, and I want to ask her, how do we get younger underage children, kids, not ready to vote, how do we get them to go to the conservative side? And that's just a challenge we have to think about. And Roxana's going to give me a little insight. What do you think, Rox?
This is a new segment on a show called On the Rocks.
On the Rocks, and she's rock hard, baby.
Hi, everybody. There's a lot going on in the world, but we can't forget the underage students, not the college. They call them the Generation Alpha.
Oh, Generation A now?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Another letter we got to think about, Dick.
Well, the lifespan is limited, so you can't have more than 26 because we run out of letters.
That's going to have to be A1,
Yeah.
A2.
Right.
And there's another generation after that as
No.
well. Yeah, Generation Beta, the children being born now through 2039. But back
They're
to your
going to be
question.
Generation AI eventually with
Yeah.
all this AI stuff.
But the Generation Alpha is 8 to 14 and 16-year-olds. They're the first generation to have grown up in fully digital world, surrounded by technology, entirely born into smartphones, social media, streaming platforms, conflicting messages, which has a profound impact on their development.
So would you say social media is anti-social kind of? You know, because they're just working with their little machine.
Well, also, they missed out on social interactions
Right.
due to COVID, and constant digital stimulation has seen an alarming rise in their anxiety and depression, including eating disorders in those as young as 8 years old, and cyberbullying not to be excluded. Untapped, not targeted yet since they're not a voting age, but they soon will be. So your question is, how do we reach them? Where is their voice in all this conflicting change in real time in their lives?
You know, that's a challenge, Rock. When I asked you about this yesterday to do this, I thought, you know, I asked her, let's try to figure out how do we get to these younger kids, you know, so we can, just the way the schools get to the kids and make them, you know, and indoctrinate them. I don't want to indoctrinate them. I want them to think for themselves. But one of the problems, and I know we don't have this answer yet, is just like when you have a dog and you want to train your dog, the trainer comes to your house and he trains you first to train the dog. So we have to understand, we have to also get to the parents. But we'll talk about that part next
Well,
week.
I did spend some time talking to them, thinking they wouldn't have any opinions, and they were actually quite excited to speak.
The parents?
No, the children.
Oh, yeah.
This generation, they had things to say of what's been going on. So they do have a voice. So they need to be listened
And
to.
they do care.
Democrats are pushing to lower the voting age to 16. So this could be politically very important.
What is it now? It's 18. Is that
18.
across the whole country, 18?
Yeah.
Okay, it's federal.
And they did some polling that this generation has a 5-second attention span due to the constant exposure and fast-paced digital content.
So you're saying they have a short attention span. You know what? They use their short finger on the text machine all the time, their thumb. That's why they have a short attention span.
and trouble problem solving. So to go back to the 25 days that Charlie Kirk was assassinated, and more people around the world who didn't know him now do so through his podcasts, as he still changes lives and mindsets, still filling the void. That what we do individually creates a collective way of living and the consciousness to do so. To explain what Turning Point Chapters has started since his death, there was 60,000 inquiries and 3,500 chapters in colleges and high schools across the nation.
Wow.
So yes, there has been a positive turn.
Actually, America First Foundation says that it will exist now in every single campus in America.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. And back to the question, how do we reach that next generation,
Right.
not a voting age, 16-year-olds and below, to want the values offered in a life of conservatism, patriots that we so need? With the world so immersed in trying to rewire not only youth to create more security, consistency, and what morality will mean towards self and one another, exactly what Charlie Kirk was trying to infiltrate into the minds of our youth for over a decade.
So how do we get to them?
So
Well,
how do
one
we
of the
get-
ways we can is by breaking the power of the teachers' union
Right.
over the schools. We've talked a lot, Doug, about how Herbert Marcuse, the leftist philosopher and Marxist, said that the key was to take what he called a long march, Mao's phrase, to American institutions and change them into radical.
And we're talking
communists.
about 1970, late 60s, 70s.
70s, 80s.
That's a long
and
time.
And a big part of that was making the teachers' union dominant politically, taking it over from the left, and making it parrot a line of basically pro-communist propaganda. And this is what these kids have been exposed to their whole lives. And it then gets worse at the college level. Now, part of the college level is the story we just spoke about. Trump is doing this voluntary compact where to get additional federal aid, the campuses have to clean up their act. Now we're talking about trying to do with people who are under that age. And the key there, I think, is school choice, to break the power of the teachers' union by giving parents a choice as to where to send their kids.
So, Rox, we're here, you believe, what's the answer
Well,
here?
one thing to what Dick was saying, this is alarming. Under 9 years old, there's been excessive screen time. They did some polling. 80% of children have been listening to sexual and violent.
Under the age of what?
9 years old.
Wow.
And it's been affecting 75% of their mental health and cyberbullying of 74%. So you ask the question. So I believe the answer is simple. We accomplish with great leadership, like President Trump, returning to the simplicities of life and family, like Charlie Kirk was trying to portray and teach. The challenge is in the undoing of the damage already created from years of gaslighting of past administrations. Polls have shown that everybody wants the same things, to live in a world with order, safety, freedom. It's not a new concept. But back to Generation Alpha. The college students will decide on the immediate future. However, these young voices, 8 to 16, have experienced and lived through, in the background, this seesaw of emotions, while our past administration created the worst environment for them to have a foundation at all to grow healthy. So where do we as a society find the cure for this
They were
disease?
locked out of their schools for 2 years.
And their
Exactly.
parents. Right.
Started in the many branches of the prior administration, media and disinformation.
Right.
So due to the constant exposure, fast-paced digital contact at a young age, therefore they're lacking in basic problem-solving skills. I think, yes, we should begin with the teachers, the parents, and also removing the ability for the children to have access to screen time.
That's parents.
Limiting it,
That's parents all the way.
Right. The key thing here is that Trump is really addressing the whole problem of how the youngest generation of Americans was anti-American in many of their views. Our polling showed during the election that under the age of 25, voters were fairly radical and left-wing. At 25, they got their first paychecks,
Right.
and got married and began to plan their lives, and they flipped, and they became conservative.
Sure.
And the polling now shows that Americans under the age of 25 are becoming more conservative than they ever have.
And like you said, it has a lot to do with COVID and not being able to go to school and get their sports scholarships and whatnot.
And proof of that, Dick, is while I was visiting that generation, 25 and up, who have children now, young babies, have flipped when they voted to Trump. Because now they have children, and before they were left.
Okay, we got to go to a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about CBS News and name the new editor. Okay, when we get back. Thank you, Roxana. On the rocks.
On the rocks.
The Dick Morris Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dick Morris Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Dick Morris and Doug DePiro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group.
And the call-in number, so you guys have it, is 800-848-9222. 800-848-9222. And I think we're going to take Sandra from New Jersey if she stops playing the piano.
Hey, Sandra.
Hi, Sandra.
Hi. Good afternoon, guys. You know, I wanted to bring up a point, different strokes for different folks. I just started reading the book, I Went to Prison So You Won't Have To, by Peter Navarro.
Oh,
and by the way, Dick Morris, you are acknowledged in that book as one of the special people who had his back when it was very much against the wall. Now, he gets 4 months in prison, and James Comey, I bet you he just gets a slap on the wrist.
No.
Now, if Michael Cohen says he's going to get punished, then I think the opposite. Because whatever he says, I go opposite. But I don't know what James Comey's going to get. But they're saying that he won't get punished like Peter Navarro did. And he didn't do anything, Peter Navarro, at all.
What Navarro did was that there was Nancy Pelosi set up, an illegal committee to investigate the January 6th riot. And it was illegal because there weren't any Republicans on it. And eventually they dragooned 2 of them into serving on the committee. And then they sent out subpoenas to try to vilify the people that were engaged in the protests on January 6th. And ultimately, Navarro refused to testify before Congress, refused to honor his subpoena because of the circumstances. And he was sentenced to 4 months in jail and had to serve it. And he's written a wonderful book called How I Went to Jail So You Don't Have to. And it's an amazing statement, not just of his history, but of the background of what he's trying to do.
Didn't Peter use executive privilege not to speak or something?
He did,
and they said
they ruled against it.
They ruled against that.
And what's been going on since then makes this book particularly relevant, because it has now turned out that there were close to 300 FBI agents who had infiltrated the group on January 6th.
Right, we're going to talk about that.
And we're egging them on to violence. We're urging them to become violent.
Unbelievable.
And Trump is investigating that and really going crazy about that.
Comey's going to squeal. That's how he's going to try to get out of a long sentence. He's going to do time, but he's going to squeal on his boys. I think that's what you said earlier, that they should go after Brennan and Comey first, because I thought they should go right for Obama. But once again, like General Flynn has told me on the phone a couple of times, even just to strip Obama of his dignity and his legacy is important. But I think Obama's going to have a problem, too. $5 on the table, Dick. We've got a $5 bet.
There's a new game in town. CBS News, we've carried this story, is changing fundamentally, flipping from being extreme left to being mainstream.
So Paramount Skydance will acquire the journalist publication, The Free Press, which she started after quitting the New York Times.
Barry Weiss, B-A-R-I.
Right, Barry Weiss. The newly formed media giant Paramount Skydance will acquire The Free Press, an online publication, and install its iconoclastic founder, Barry Weiss, as editor-in-chief of CBS News, according to the 2 people familiar with the matter. Paramount Skydance is expected to announce Monday that it will pay $150 million in cash and stock for the Free Press and the name Weiss to CBS News and name Weiss to CBS News top editorial job, said one of the people. The move heralds a new era at the 98-year-old broadcast network whose corporate parents made moves to address the Trump administration allegations of liberal bias as they sought approval for an $8 billion merger that was finalized in August. The appointment of Weiss, a staunch advocate of Israel and frequent critic of the mainstream media, to lead the company's news operation follows its hiring last month of a conservative-leaning ombudsman. Yeah, I got it. To field complaints about the network's editorial coverage. Weiss, whose background is in opinion journalism commentary, has no experience working at broadcast television network, hired by the New York Times opinions section in 2017 as a part of a push to bring more conservative voices onto its pages after Trump's election. She resigned in 2020, saying she had been bullied by liberal colleagues for her views.
This is one of the most major transformations of the Trump presidency. It was ABC, NBC, and CBS. Now it's just ABC and NBC. CBS has flipped and joined the good guys. And the appointment of Barry Weiss as their chief news person is incredible. It's a total major reversal of a huge part of the journalistic establishment.
It's great. It's just from Elon Musk to do what he did with X,
Yep.
You know, and that was Twitter,
well,
right?
A big part of that was Trump's lawsuit against CBS, where he got them to pay damages for editing an interview with Kathleen Harris to make her look good. And then...
Kakla.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in addition to that, the CBS has been taken over by Paramount, which is fairly conservative. And it's really flipped CBS News. So very soon you can start watching it again.
Wow, you think like all of a sudden these liberal journalists are either going to leave or switch their view or,
yes.
Change their mind a little bit?
Well, change their switch.
Yeah.
Because they like their paychecks.
That's exactly right. That's exactly. How Dems lose prospects for House majority. This is good.
Ever since the Constitution was ratified, the House has been in turmoil over reapportionment. The Senate's fixed at 2 members per state, but the controversy is focused on House seats. First, in the immediate years after the Constitution was written, the South demanded that slaves, although unable to vote, be counted in the census in the allocation of House seats. The compromise was that each slave counted as 3/4 of a person. In modern time, that requirement that all inheritance be counted, that all those who lived in the country be counted in the census, has led to the inclusion of hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of illegal immigrants in the allocation of House seats, giving the Democrats an extra 10 or 12 seats. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has said she has deported 2 million illegal immigrants, who obviously will not be counted in the census, diminishing the Democratic ranks. But the real distortion in House representation came with the Supreme Court ruling that race must be a factor in drawing congressional lines as a result of the 65 Voting Rights Act. Subsequent interpretations have forced congressional mapmakers to work hard to create majority-minority districts, increasing black and Latino representation in the House dramatically. There are now 67 black Democrats in the Congress, and they're going to have to start working for a living because those districts will be competitive. The constitutional basis for including race has always been questionable, but now a case, Louisiana versus Calais, is emerging to test it. A decision is expected that will impact House lines for the 26th election. If the court rules against race-based districts, which I think they will, you need at least 4 judges to accept the case in the first place, the Democrats would face a devastating loss of representation in Congress, and the number of minority congressmen would probably be cut sharply.
You know,
these 67 folks who are black, who are Democrats, are accustomed to cruising to re-election, having basically no opponents, no primaries, and overwhelmingly minority districts. So there really is no Republican Party. Now these lines are going to be changed so that these districts can no longer be gerrymandered to assure the election of black Congress.
See, this is what I want to ask you, Dick. We only have a minute left before we break. Explain Congress and the apportionment and the lines. How does it work?
Well, the lines for Congress are drawn by each state legislature, but they're subject to regulation by the federal government in the Voting Rights Act. And originally, the Voting Rights Act was passed to assure that minorities would get representation in Congress. There didn't used to be any. And as a result of it, large numbers of districts were created that were minority districts. And then the court ruled that you basically had to work hard to create majority-minority districts. And what the Republicans under Lee Atwater did, which was brilliant, is they said, okay, we'll take all the white liberals, all the Democrats, and we'll put them into those districts. And that way all the other districts will become Republican and we'll win Congress. Well, that's been going on for a couple of years now. But now the court is ruling, may well be ruling, that you cannot use race as the basis for drawing district lines. You can't say, I'm going to go to this district and that one go around this corner,
right,
go over this river, because I want to include blacks.
Listen, we have to take a break, but when we come back, I want to ask you how that's defined, the borderline of district and how it works. I'll ask you for the details, all right?
Okay.
I'm very curious about exactly how they do it. All right, we have to go to break.
The Dick Morris Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dick Morris Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Dick Morris, Doug DePiro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group.
So, Dick, let me just ask you, by the way, while you were learning apportionment and all of this other boolah about Congress, I was like building a 59 Vet or an old Panhead. So can you explain to me the details of how they figure out what the districts are and how do they figure out the lines and the border of the districts? How is that done?
Every state is given a certain number of congressmen, and they can determine where those districts are set. But they have to not exceed that number of congressmen. And traditionally, what's been the case is that cities and counties and towns were included in certain districts. So that you could say, my district is New Paltz, or my district is Rockland County, or my district is Summit, New Jersey. But then, after the Voting Rights Act was passed in '65, the courts began to rule that you couldn't just draw lines based on counties or districts or cities. You couldn't just say we're going to include Newark or we're going to include Patterson. You had to be very specific about it, and that if the district line you drew did not create a sufficient number of black districts, there were too many whites in the district, then the lines had to be changed to redrawn to make the districts blacker. And the result is that there are now 67 black Democratic congressmen who basically face no challenge for re-election. They're like automatically re-elected. They're never defeated. Sometimes they die or they retire, but that's it. And now there's a challenge in Louisiana to say it's unconstitutional to use race to draw lines. And race, which used to be the method of keeping people out of Congress, now is being used to bring them into Congress. And the legal people are saying that still is unconstitutional. And if the court agrees with them, which I think they will, it's going to completely decimate the Democratic ranks of black legislators.
Okay, now I understand, I think. Anyway, murder rate is falling. Crime is down. This is a beautiful story. We know that murder is falling fast and that it's almost certainly well below pre-COVID levels. That's clear in the FBI data. The RTCI, Real-Time Crime Index, takes a sample of data from several hundred cities to evaluate national crime trends as they occur. According to the most recent RTCI sample of 562 agencies covering 116 million people, murder is down 20% through July this year compared to 24. Excuse me, doing back of the napkin math, which I do often, of 15 to 20%.
Yeah, but then you use the napkin.
Yeah, I got to watch you using it when you do. On the back of the napkin, 15 to 20% drop in 2025 on top of the FBI's estimated murder rate for 2024 points to a strong likelihood of the lowest murder rate ever recorded this year, dated back to 1960. Do we know why? No. Criminologists also don't know why crime fell so severely in the 90s. It's a major accomplishment that we can actually measure changing crime trends as they occur, but explaining them is a whole nother challenge. Any explanation must account for at least 5 factors. Number one, the declines are occurring nearly everywhere in the U.S. That's number one. Number two, the declines began in 2023 but have accelerated the last 2 years. Number three, most medium and large cities have fewer police officers today than they had in 2022. Got to watch out for defund the police now, talking about that. Number four, we have not fixed the supposed root causes of crime, such as poverty and lack of educational opportunities.
So I'll
number
give you...
five, one more. The nation is still awash in guns.
Yeah, well, I'll give you my reason, which is that I think that there's a guy named Lott, I forget his first name, not Trent, an author, who wrote a book called More Guns, Less Crime. Mm-hmm. And he correlates the relaxation of controls on guns, the proliferation of gun ownership, with the drop in the crime rate. And he correlates how when guns are allowed, crime goes down and murder goes down. Now, the left refuses to admit that this is the case, and they claim that this is all wrong. And they say that the main thing is the investment of federal government in
money, sure.
money,
throw
and
money at it.
streetlights and
Right.
more cops and all of this. But this is directly in the face of that.
Well, first of all, gun murders is something like 30,000 a year, but a third of that is suicide. But if you want to take the guns away from all the people, well, accidents, automobile accident is over 50,000 people a year. So now we have to take cars away from people. If you really, that was Charlie Kirk. I watched him on this a while back, and he was right. He goes, if you're going to look at people that are dying every year, car accidents a lot more. So this is what this guy said. In my opinion, the main driver is that an enormous investment from the federal government in the years after the pandemic enabled a vast array of new efforts that have had enormous effect. This includes a massive increase in local government hiring in the wake of the pandemic that allowed for government programming and services to be restored, huge increases in local state government construction on streets and street lighting, neighborhood and social centers. That is important.
But that's what the left is saying.
Yeah.
I think that it's more guns.
Yeah, I do
I
too.
think that as gun controls have relaxed and more people buy guns, and there's been a vast increase in gun ownership, that has directly resulted in the reduction of crime, and particularly the reduction of the murder rate. Now, you won't hear that from any of the academics or any of the establishment, but I think that's happening.
Well, listen, if you walk down a neighborhood, I'm going to go rob something. I know this is a rich neighborhood. I live in the Bronx. I'm going to go down that street. If I see a guy with free gun zone, no guns allowed here, and I see another guy with the sticker, what is it? The NRS, right?
NRA sticker.
NRA sticker. I'm going to go to the guy with the free gun zone, no guns allowed, right? That's basically it in a nutshell.
There are over 500 million civilian-owned firearms in the U.S. in 24.
500 million.
As opposed to 259 million in 2020.
Well, isn't that why Japan didn't
Doubling.
attack us and come into America in World War II? They knew that the good old boys would protect them.
Well,
the
maybe
land.
the atomic bomb had something to do with it.
You think? That's a good answer, Dick. Very good.
But
You told me.
But the idea is now twice as many people have guns as had it 25 years ago.
Right.
And I think that is a huge factor in reducing the crime rate.
Beautiful. And Como can't win.
When we
Even
come
if
back,
Sliwa
we'll talk
drops
about
out.
the mayor's race with Adams dropping out.
The Dick Morris Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dick Morris Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Dick Morris and Doug DePiro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group. Well, Eric Adams has withdrawn from re-election, and it's now a head-to-head race between Cuomo, Mamdani, and Sliwa. And the three most recent polls testing Mamdani against Cuomo in a head-to-head still show Mamdani comfortably ahead between 47 and 49% of the vote. These polls also show how reluctant Republicans are to back Cuomo, even against the socialist Mamdani.
That's why we need Sliwa.
The undecided share of the vote in the Marist poll, for example, ranges from a mere 5% in a four-way race to 12% in the head-to-head. Mamdani would only need a tiny fraction of that 12% to back him to give him a real chance to defeat Cuomo. And here the real question is, if Sliwa stays in the race, which I think he will.
He's not dropping out.
And will crazy Democrats vote for Cuomo, or will they vote for Mamdani, or will they vote for Sliwa?
Wow.
And those who say we can't have a Republican mayor, or a Republican can't win, well, tell that to John Lindsay, or to Fiorello LaGuardia,
Or Rudy.
or to Rudy Giuliani.
The best mayor in
all
history.
Republicans who won. And I know there have been demographic changes since then, but I believe that it is very possible that Sliwa can win. And it's becoming increasingly clear that no matter how many people you knock out of the race, voters still do not want Andrew Cuomo because of what he did during the COVID crisis, where he voluntarily and deliberately forced the relocation of 6,000 people who were suffering from COVID into nursing homes. And those nursing homes were populations very vulnerable to COVID. And 6,000 people died as a result of Cuomo's efforts. Meantime, empty was the hospital ship sent up from Washington, and empty was the Javits Center, which could have accommodated 5,000 or 6,000 people, obviating the need to put them in nursing homes in New York.
So you got to wonder, I have to wonder, forget about Democrat, Republican, how about safe streets? You know, if you get Curtis in there, he's going to clean up the streets. He's going to get the police strong again, and you're not going to be I just can't see that there are Democrats that are so mindset and are so brainwashed that they have to vote Democrat that they don't care about the crime in the street. You know Curtis is on the street. He's in the subways. So I have a hard time believing that they won't vote for him, even though they're never going to say it. The polls are going to say, no, I'm not going to vote for him. And then they're going to go to that little pull-out arm, and they're going to pull an arm for Curtis, you know?
Justice is advancing, and Trump is teeing up his investigation of George Soros. President Trump sent shockwaves to Washington, D.C. when he told reporters in the Oval Office that George Soros was a likely candidate for investigation by his Justice Department.
If you look at Soros, he's at the top of everything. And first of all, I call him Sorrow, George Sorrow. Sorry, George. If you look at Soros, he's at the top of everything. Trump explained to reporters on Thursday. He's in every story that I read, so I guess he'd be a likely candidate. This wasn't some off-the-cuff remark from Trump. The president has been building a case against the radical billionaire, for months, previously stating that both George and his son Alex Soros should face racketeering charges. George Soros and his wonderful radical left son should be charged with violations of racketeering, influence, and corruption organization. That's the RICO Act, because their support of violent protests and much more all throughout the United States of America. Trump posted that on his social. The announcement comes just days after Trump instructed Attorney General Pam Bondi to seek criminal charges against other deep state operatives like former FBI Director James Comey, California Senator Adam Schiff for brains, and New York Attorney LaShista James. The scope of Soros' radical empire finally exposed. The numbers behind Soros' political manipulation are staggering. His Open Society Foundation network has burned through more than $24 billion to date, with $1.2 billion spent in 24 alone on left-wing causes. That money has gone towards what the foundation euphemistically calls working on access to education and health care, radical justice, drug policy reform, and expanding human rights. But anyone paying attention knows what it really means. It's code for funding the radicals' left war on American values, law enforcement, and traditional institutions. The foundation's tentacles reach into more than 100 countries, making Soros, one of the most powerful globalist manipulators on the planet. Can you believe this, Dick?
Well, I'm glad he might be finally getting his. This is the big enchilada here.
Big enchilada.
And it looks to me like Trump is going to go after him. We'll see.
And he wouldn't say that unless Bondi has stuff on him already.
Right.
He's not just going to come out and talk crapola unless he sees what's going on. And Tulsi Gabbard and Pam Bondi, they have stuff on them.
Now, 2 weeks ago, it was revealed that the FBI had secretly placed, against all rules, regulations, protocols, and standards, 274 federal agents, FBI agents, into the crowd just prior to and during the January 6th hoax.
Wow. Trump
posted on Truth Social. This is different from what Christopher Wray stated over and over and over again. That's right. I'm quoting Trump now. That's right. As it now turns out, FBI agents were at and in the January 6th protests, probably acting as agitators, insurrectionists, but certainly not as law enforcement officials. Former FBI director stated under oath there were no agents in the crowd on January 6th. Trump said, "I think that's perjury. There were 275 agents in the crowd, undercover, guiding the group to the Capitol." Trump said, "I want to know who each and every one of these so-called agents are and what they were up to on that now historic day. Many great American patriots, including Peter Navarro, were made to pay a very high price only for the love of their country. I owe this investigation of dirty cops and crooked politicians to them." Trump continued. Christopher Wray, the then director of the FBI, has some major explaining to do. That's 2 in a row. Comey and Wray got caught lying with our great country at stake in the Russia hoax investigation and in January 6th. We can never let this happen to America again, Trump concluded.
Was that a congressional hearing Wray was on that he might have lied? Was it?
Yeah.
Is that where it does?
It was.
It
was, and
congressional.
They could have him for perjury in this.
Yeah, beautiful. Trump orders federal mortgage lenders Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae to close New York offices due to Letitia James violations. New York State's Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac offices will permanently close in direct response to Attorney General LaShista James' corrupt and dangerous business practices in the state. We are shutting down the 2 New York offices for Fannie and Freddie as a result of Letitia James' corrupt and dangerous business practices in the state, a source close to the Federal Housing Finance talked about. A public announcement on the closure is set for later Thursday, Fox Digital learned. will still employ New York residents and will still continue to do mortgage loans in New York, of course, the source continued, but we are going to eliminate our physical presence, and to the extent that we have leases, we are going to be subleasing those. The FHFA is an
Federal Housing Finance Agency.
Is an independent federal agency that oversees Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and the federal home loan banking system. James is a longtime political foe of President Trump, including campaigning for the Attorney General job in 2018 by vowing to aggressively pursue legal charges against Trump if elected, adding she exposed a con man after her win. Yeah, okay. Her office leveled nearly 100 legal challenges against the first Trump administration and added after his second presidential win in 24 that she would continue challenging him in the courts to defend the rights of New Yorkers and the rule of law. What a bunch of BS.
A Norfolk, Virginia home James purchased in 2023 is at the heart of the investigation.
Jamie the Shyster identified the home on mortgage documents and a Fannie Mae Freddie Mac, that's perfect, right? And Fannie Mae Freddie Mac form as a property that would serve as a primary residence according to the criminal referral Pult sent the Department of Justice in April. James is legally required to live in New York as a statewide elected official in the Empire State. The criminal referral also cited past reported issues with James' properties, including a 2001 purchase of a Brooklyn, New York property. The certificate of occupancy lists the property as a 5-unit residence, while James' mortgages list the property as 4 units, which could affect the mortgage agreement.
And James said that on her mortgage application that her husband was helping her fund the properties. It turns out her husband was, in fact, her father, and she totally misstated the relationship.
Is that why her eyes are very close together?
Yeah.
That's just so wrong. Musk urges boycott of Netflix over transgender advocacy. Elon Musk is urging parents to boycott Netflix, accusing the streaming giant of pushing a transgender woke agenda on children. Cancel Netflix for the health of your kids, Musk wrote, after criticizing the animated show Dead End, Paranormal Park for featuring transgender storylines and themes. This is not okay, Musk wrote in a separate message, amplifying a post by Libs of TikTok that included a clip from the series. Marketed as suitable for children ages 7 and up, the show includes a character who comes out as identifying as transgender. Just what our kids need to hear all the time is this kind of crap. How about you let them go play some baseball once in a while? Become a man. The character says, I've never been happier, and the character stresses the importance of living your life without apology and don't tell your parents anything and we'll do it for you. Don't worry about it. That I made that part up. The scary part is how prevalent this is in kids' shows. The account stated they're infected. Musk's boycott call was quickly echoed by a number of conservative influencers who urge others to drop the service. I mean, really, let the kids play some ball outside. Let them go.
Yeah, but this is part of a real propaganda effort by the left over the last number of years to increase the number of transgender people, on young people. And at the same time that they accuse the educational officials of being fascists and they accuse the system of being reactionary, they're doing everything they can to recruit young people to become transgender.
What is the percentage of transgender in America? 1.1%?
We don't really know. We know that 7% of Americans say they're gay, and probably a higher percentage in reality, but it's officially 7%. And a fraction of that, a tiny fraction of that, maybe a 100th of that, are in fact transgender.
But they're going at it, the Dems. They love to go at this.
Now, one of the big reasons why all of the networks like CBS News and others are folding as a result of the Trump's offensive is that YouTube, was ordered to pay Trump $25 million to settle a suit over the blackout in the wake of October 6th.
But wait a minute, only $25 million? We got a break, but if it was Trump, it would have been $100 million. Anyway, when we come back, we'll talk about the story. Thank you, guys.
The Dick Morris Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dick Morris Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Dick Morris and Doug DePiro Show. One of the most brilliant things Trump has done is using lawsuits to go after the media establishment.
Where'd he get that from?
And forcing them to, and forcing them to be fair. And now is it not only suing the networks, but suing online providers too, like YouTube.
Right. YouTube agreed to pay $24.5 million, and he wins. That's the thing, Dick. He's winning a lot of these suits. Agreed to pay $24.5 million to President Trump to settle a lawsuit over suspending his account in 2021, according to documents filed in the court in September 29. Now, this is important. He doesn't have to do this. He doesn't need the money, and he doesn't need the recognition, but he's doing it. He's stopping them from doing this a lot. So that's the most important thing. He's thinking about that.
So what the left did is it ginned up these protesters, infiltrated it with FBI agents who egged them on, who did everything they could to get them to invade the
Capitol. What I wanted to ask you, Dick?
And then they shut Trump off from the internet,
right?
So he couldn't tell the truth.
The truth. How many were there in January 6th? Approximately 1,000 people, 500?
No, it was more. It was more, but
it was in the
number actually prosecuted was a little under 1,000.
Right. And there was almost 300 FBI people in there. That's why I brought that up. The social media website owned by Alphabet put Trump's YouTube account on hold following a security breach at the Capitol. Trump also sued Alphabet-owned Google, Facebook parent Meta, and X, then known as Twitter, arguing that they illegally suppressed his view so he couldn't talk. In a YouTube settlement, $22 million will be sent on Trump's behalf to the Trust for the National Mall, a nonprofit that is involved in building a $200 million ballroom at the White House. I love that. The balance of the settlement will be sent to other plaintiffs in the lawsuit, including American Conservative Union, which runs the annual Conservative Political Action Conference, CPAC. Is that our friend?
Yeah.
Right. The other plaintiffs to receive payments are Andrew Baggiani, Austin Fletcher, Maurice Veronica Jean-Louis, Jesus, Frank Valenti, Kelly Victor, and Noemi Wolf, according to the notice settlements filed with the U.S. District Court for Northern District of California.
Now, California has passed a new law that says that ICE agents cannot wear face masks when they arrest illegal immigrants.
But there was a law that you had to wear a face mask a couple of years ago.
Because of COVID.
That's different.
But now they're not allowed to wear face masks.
Yeah, right. Okay.
A new California law banning federal law enforcement officials from wearing face masks while on duty has left agents and their families fearing for their safety. California Governor Newsom signed into legislation a law on September 20th that makes it a misdemeanor crime for local and federal law enforcement officials to wear face coverings.
Now, first of all, when Newsom doesn't accept our guys ICE coming in and taking his illegals out of there, and he says he blocks and whatnot, so frig you, we're going to block that. We're going to leave the mask on our guys, right? Why should we enforce his law when he won't enforce federal laws?
I think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But the idea is that he's actually doing everything he can, Newsom, to keep illegals and criminals in the United States.
Sure.
And part of that is that when the courageous officers of the ICE try to arrest them and deport them, they're not allowed to cover their faces that they can be what's called doxxed, which means that people can find out who they are and where they live and who they're married to and who their children are and what school they go to so that they can terrorize them.
Nope, sorry. Listen, maybe these people, they wouldn't want to actually side with America, would they, once in a while, the liberals? You think you'd want to side with America?
Trump now threatens to withhold money from New York City if Mamdani wins. The political landscape was jolted again this week as Trump issued an extraordinary warning that could reshape the city's already fraught mayor's race. Trump threatened to withhold federal funding from the nation's largest city if Mamdani is elected. Now, if Mamdani is elected, New York City is going to go broke very quickly because nobody is going to lend it money. He's got a candidate who says he's not going to permit rent increases. He's even with costs going up. He's going to give free access to subways and buses, even though there's a gigantic deficit there. And Wall Street is going to say, okay, guy, have your way, but we ain't giving you any money.
They're going to move to Texas or Florida.
Well, that's the key thing right now. Wall Street is moving to Texas.
Yeah, or Florida, right?
Or Florida.
One or the
other.
other.
The physical street. But there's increasing pressure to relocate the world's financial center out of New York City and move it to Florida or Texas.
That's horrible. Is this because of Mamdani?
Because of Mamdani.
Yeah, but if he doesn't win, they're not doing it tomorrow, right?
No.
Right.
But they'll do it if he wins.
Oh, my God. That should be enough for the voters to say, wait a minute, whoa, simmer down now. Right.
Financiers and banks have been gradually pulling investment capital out of New York for financial companies. But now it's a stampede. J.P. Morgan Chase, for instance, now has more employees in Texas than it does in New York. Why? Climate change extremism, the high taxes, the noose of regulation, and now the prospects of Mamdani winning means Wall Street may soon have repelled the very capitalist spirit that made New York great in the first place. The only question is whether the new Wall Street be located in Dallas or Miami.
Wow, that's unbelievable. They're going to go to Miami, probably. I don't know. I'm just making that up.
I believe that one of the problems that Trump is facing is that the average American is saying, yeah, I know, read about these great big deals you make, the tariff deals, the media deals. You get people to invest several $1 billion in the United States and close to $1 trillion. And then I don't notice any real change in my paycheck or my life. And as the country awaits a Supreme Court ruling on the legality of Trump's global tariffs, the president is considering paying Americans a dividend with the revenue. I've spoken to Trump and urged him to do this.
Yep.
Trump told One American News on Thursday that he's contemplating giving Americans up to $2,000 in rebates derived from tariffs. After saying the tariffs have generated enough money to cut the U.S. deficit in half, Trump was asked how the additional revenue would be used. He said, with the kind of growth we have now, debt is very low, relatively speaking. You grow yourself out of that debt. Mm-hmm. The numbers we have now are bigger than they ever were. We might make a major distribution to people. We're thinking of almost $1,000 to $2,000. Dividends to Americans were first floated in February when businessman James Fishback suggested returning 20% of the savings identified by Musk's Doja project to the people. So this could make a big difference, and don't hold your breath, but I think it's very likely to happen. Guess what? Democrats don't trust the media.
No. Don't they own the media?
Actually, Democrats trust the media, but it's Republicans that don't.
Right.
A survey showed that 54% of Democrats trust mass media, compared to only 12% of Republicans and 27% of independents.
No kidding. Wow. Trump's going to invest heavily in coal industry. The Trump administration will spend $625 million to modernize coal plants to keep them operational and open 13 million acres of federal land to coal mining. The move reverses a decade-long push to extinguish coal, that's funny, extinguish coal, as an energy source in the U.S. and helps revive an industry weakened by the growth in natural gas.
Coal has gone from about 40% of American energy to less than 10%.
Wow.
And we have vast reserves of coal in the United States.
So let's use it,
and let's
right?
use it. And Energy Secretary said most of the money would be spent modernizing aging plants and funding coal projects. to bring affordable and reliable energy to rural areas.
It marks a significant step towards President Trump's pledge to revive the nation's coal industry. I can imagine how many people, which has been in decline due to part to increasingly strict emission caps and other environmental regulations. The coal industry has been under assault under previous administrations, but now coal plants will remain relied upon to power the U.S. and win the AI race, Mr. Wright said. President Trump promised to revive that to help lower rising costs, protect national security, and meet increasing energy demands, particularly from the growing artificial intelligence industry. Coal has largely been replaced by natural gas. Solar and wind have also become a larger part of the U.S. energy mix, but they require backup power sources such as coal, nuclear, or natural gas. Regulators have warned that aggressively phasing out coal and other fossil fuel sources and replacing them with intermittent solar and wind power risks destabilizing the electrical grid, particularly during extremely hot or cold weather when in demand. The Interior Department ended a moratorium on federal coal leasing nearly a decade after it was paused by the Obama administration. The department also moved to eliminate regulations it deemed burdensome through a review of federal oversight rules. It streamlined the review process for coal mining on public lands and lowered the royalty fees for coal operations.
This is a whole new development in the Green New Deal and the Green Scam, because
that's more like it, Green Scam.
It turns out that energy is the key to AI. The AI development requires huge amounts of computer time, huge amounts of electricity. And that's the main constraint on being able to develop it. You basically have to take all of your computing power and put it online and put it up to get AI done. And what Trump is doing now is saying we now need coal and all of the above, as well as more oil drilling, as well as more solar and everything, to make sure we can meet the demands of AI. Traditionally, the southern states have been at the bottom of educational attainment, and that was always measured by the amount of money they spent. National Education Association ripped off the country 50 years ago by publishing a book called Ranking of the States, which I used to get, which ranked the states on education. And it did so not based on outcome, not based on how many could read or write, not based on how many graduated, based on how much money the state spent per capita. And Mississippi and Alabama were always at the bottom. Back when I worked for Clinton in Arkansas, they used to say, thank God for Mississippi, because that meant Arkansas didn't rank 50th in education. But Mississippi is now the number one state in the country for teaching low-income and minority kids to read. And Louisiana is number 2, followed by Florida. The story is massively underreported because it's embarrassing to the blue states that have massively outspent them with nothing to show for it. Mississippi, Louisiana, and Florida now rank 1, 2, and 3 in the Urban Institute's 4th grade reading scores, despite low spending levels. That should be a wake-up call. The Wall Street Journal has reported that the southern states have gotten back to good old-fashioned phonics for reading comprehension, and it works.
Right. Let's go to Kathleen in Yonkers. She's talking about the teachers' union. There's your segue, Kathleen.
Hey, Kathleen.
Hey, Doug. Perfect segue, actually. And I think teachers' strike in Yonkers, 1977.
I remember that.
30-day strike. My father was the president of the Board of Education at the time. And
what's your father's name?
James O'Keefe.
Sure.
And that's his real name, yeah, but not related.
I was in the 10th grade then, 77, I think, something like that.
10th grade. So you were probably with my sister or brother.
Yeah.
But I remember, actually, I do remember that those teachers were calling our house, and my brother couldn't go to school tell your husband to look in the rearview mirror, all these kinds of threats. But, but I recently just looked up his name for, Googling it, and I saw an article that was written in the New York Times that was like a review of like what were the results of the strike. And the funny part, I'll tell you, is that the president of the teachers union, Mr. Tice, his kids and our kids, we all went to school together. We knew each other, and my father and Mr. Tice were in the store one time, and
I know his daughters.
Yeah. And the song about the look for the union label came on the radio, and my father and Mr. Tice just looked at each other.
That's funny.
But the bottom line is that they struck for 30 days, and the parents didn't have any place to put their kids for all that time. So it ultimately, that was part of the consideration. But the previous teacher's contract had job security, no transfers of teachers. Like the union was in control of all of the things that were happening, not the Board of Education. So there was limits as far as what they were able to get control of.
Wow.
But that was in 1977.
In Yonkers? Was that Yonkers, Kathleen?
And that's so relevant.
Yeah, Yonkers. Your school. Yeah,
I went to Roosevelt.
At Roosevelt. Yeah, we have our 50th reunion this weekend. So
Good for you. You look at the Kirk assassination, you see the impact of the indoctrination of kids by the teachers union. This all started, as you're saying, in the 70s when teachers went on strike. And the head of the teachers union, Albert Shanker, was criticized for not promoting education quality. And he said, when kids start paying union dues, we'll start paying attention.
Oh, isn't that nice? What about the parents of those kids?
Right.
Wow.
So
thank you, Kathleen. That was great. So you went to Roosevelt, too. I must know you.
Yeah, no, we have a lot of common friends.
Good. All right, Kathleen, maybe I'll see you at the reunion.
Yeah, I'd love to see you at the Marriott this weekend. Or at the high school in the morning. We're having coffee and bagels.
Oh, I read about
Come on
that.
Down.
I did read about that. All right, Kathleen, thank you. So Trump opposes hepatitis B shots for babies. First of all, why should he even think of having that?
It's sexually transmitted.
Right. During a press event on the cause of autism on Monday, and by the way, Roxanne's going to do a segment maybe next week or the week after on this autism and all of that business. Very important. President Trump praised ACIP's reevaluation of the hepatitis B vaccine and told parents to wait to vaccinate their children against this hepatitis B. Hepatitis B is sexually transmitted. There's no reason to give a baby that almost just born. It's ridiculous. That's what Trump said. Trump reiterated the point Friday morning, posted on Truth Social, that children should take hepatitis B shots at 12 years old or older, and importantly, take vaccines in 5 separate medical visits. I don't understand. I do understand that. You get the same amount after the 5th one, but in other words, instead of taking one big shot, is that the idea of that?
I guess.
I think so. Okay. Next, despite Kirk's assassination, Charlie, the Dems are still using fascist label to attack Trump. This is horrible. The Democrats are refusing to back away from calling Trump and his allies fascists as Republicans intensify warnings that the rhetoric is reckless and fuels political violence, and they don't care. That's the thing. They don't care what it does. They want this to happen. It seems that way, and it is that way. A gunman opened fire last week at Dallas Immigration and Customs Enforcement Facility, killing one detainee and injuring 2 others. Less than 2 weeks earlier, conservative Charlie Kirk was assassinated, with officials saying the suspect left behind ammunition etched with a reference to fascism. Democratic lawmakers and leaders, however, refuse to walk away from the labeling most typically associated with Nazi Germany. It's horrible. Governor Gavin Newsom office blasted White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy Stephen Miller as a fascist in a post on X. It's horrible. That defiance was echoed about 2 weeks ago at a press conference in which Democrats denounced what they described as an assault on free expression with Jimmy Kimmel. Frig him too. Fashion is not on the way. It is here. Republican Maxwell Frost, Democrat of Florida, said in the events, the First Amendment, this is him talking about us, right? First Amendment is how generation of Americans from civil rights activists to labor organizations, American workers, LGBTQ, FYZ, plus activists have fought for progressive and it's our power, whatever. I can't, it's tired of this. Donald Trump is trying to destroy our democracy. Sure he is. Let me tell you, we got to stop this now. I think that people like me and on the right side, we're not taking it anymore. When I'm down in Florida, I'm going to drive my truck. I'm not going to drive my really cool cars because if somebody gets in front of me, I'm running them over. And then I'm going to back up over them just to make sure they're okay. So we got to take a break.
Yeah.
We got to take a break. When we come back, I'll run some more people over. Thank you.
The Dick Morris Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dick Morris Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
In the book of Stupid Things, Politics, this is Dick Morris with the Dick Morris and Doug DePiro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group. One of the stupidest things that's ever happened in politics was when Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader, shut the government down last week. He said that he was shutting it down to try to get subsidies restored under the Obamacare Act. But in fact, what was happening was that in March, when the government shut down, Trump stood up to Schumer and Schumer backed down and took Democrats, 10 Democrats with him who agreed to reopen the government, and the effort failed. The left closed in on Schumer and said, if you do this again, we will run against you. We will put AOC to run against you for the Senate. And Schumer caved in, and he's gone along with the government shutdown.
Such a pussy.
Now Trump is doing a great move. During the first 8 months of his second term, Trump has tried to hollow out the federal workforce by any means possible, including paying more than 200,000 people not to work, dismantling entire agencies via DOJ, and fighting in court any effort by employers to hang on to their jobs. But this week, Trump could try his most audacious move yet, using a government shutdown to conduct mass firings. The congressional impasse over spending may now supercharge Trump's efforts to slash the civil service, just as the bulk of those being paid not to work lose their job when the fiscal year ends. Should the government shut down tomorrow, it could lead to the dramatic winnowing of its size that conservatives have sought for decades. So Schumer, in an effort to save his seat so that AOC doesn't defeat him, has decided to pose as a radical crazy, and he's actually done a great job of committing suicide. There's a great cartoon of a donkey standing on a ledge saying, if you don't give in to my demands, I'm going to jump.
That's like when Al Sharpton used to go on a hunger strike. Remember that?
Yeah, right.
He was like 400 pounds. You need to go on a hunger strike, Al. Reverend Al Sharpton. Ukraine attacks wipe out 17% of Russia's oil refineries. This is a great story. Russia has been described as a gas station masquerading as a country, but its once mighty oil empire, the beating heart of its economy, is military machine, and its geopolitical leverage is collapsing before the world's eyes. If Putin doesn't make peace and fast, Donald Trump means to push him over the edge. In just a few short months, Ukrainian drone strikes have destroyed 17% of Russia's oil refinery capacity. That is not a typo. Nearly a fifth of all Russian oil processes and infrastructure have gone up in smoke. The International Energy Agency, the IEA, confirms Russia's effective oil export price has plunged to just $35 per barrel, less than half of what the Kremlin needs to fund its war, its welfare state, or even basic government operations. Putin needs $10 billion a month just to fund the war. That's going away fast, and you can only drain your foreign currency and gold reserve for so long. As this death spiral accelerates, President Trump has begun delivery of 3,300 long-range ERAM missiles to pump up the pressure. They're cheaper than the ATACMs and Storm Shadow with similar range, more bang for the buck, and the bang is hitting Putin's oil production, refining, and transport. Wow, the back is hitting Putin in the bucks, is what I say. The bang is hitting Putin in the bucks.
This is how Trump is basically settling the Ukraine war. He worked on negotiating with Putin, and Putin stonewalled him, said, "I'll do it," and then didn't do anything. Right. And Trump is fighting back with these missile attacks in Ukraine. By the way, there's a fascinating development going on in military warfare, which is that the Israelis and the United States are developing a system very much like Ronald Reagan's Star Wars system in the 1980s, where they use lasers to shoot down enemy weapons. But the difference is that this is not targeted at missiles or planes. This is targeted at mass drones. Increasingly, the insurgents are using cheap drones to flood the other side, and then it costs too much to shoot them all down.
Who's winning this technology right now?
And at the moment, the insurgents are winning it. But now Israel and America have stepped up to the plate, and they are producing and deploying very, very cheap, inexpensive laser systems that knock down the enemy aircraft and missiles, and more importantly, drones and other attack vehicles, which cost very little money to do. For a couple of pennies each, they can knock these stuff out of the sky. The problem has been that each time Israel's Iron Dome shoots down an incoming missile, it costs $10 or $15 million. Now they'll cost a couple of pennies.
Right.
And this technology is coming en route.
You know, it almost seems like, I wish this would be, but I don't think so. It almost seems like we're going to have a stalemate eventually with these wars, because everyone's just going to have lasers, this and that, and no one's going to be able to do anything.
Yeah, well,
so maybe we won't have wars anymore.
Yeah, well, that's not a dream. It's very possible with this new system that Israel and the U.S. are developing,
that no one's going to be able to
that
fight.
Nuclear weapons will become obsolete.
Right.
Because nobody will be able to fire them.
Right.
And
they're going to have to go back to the battlefield with swords.
And I think that this is increasingly likely.
That would be
very,
a beautiful,
very positive.
That's
it's
a good
wonderful
thing.
Development. Yep.
Yeah, I just thought of that. Yeah. We want to go to anybody here?
Yeah.
Oh, we got a break?
Okay, when we come back.
When we come back.
We'll talk about Trump is setting up a website to sell meds directly to the public.
The Pusher Man.
Bypassing the whole pharmaceutical establishment.
The Dick Morris Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dick Morris Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Dick Morris and Doug DePiro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group.
So Trump is the next guy with the meds. This is great. Trump prescription drug platform. The administration has announced plans to roll out a website called TrumpRx.com for Americans to purchase pharmaceutical drugs at discounted prices. The president made the announcement along with one that Pfizer has agreed to sell its products in the U.S. at most favorable nation pricing, a day after his deadline for drug makers to offer lower prices. Trump signed an executive order earlier this year for companies to sell their drugs in the U.S. at lower price they sell them in other developed countries. The order also requires the companies to establish direct-to-consumer avenues to cut out the middlemen and not sell drug for lower prices in other countries. The Hill's Joseph Choi reports that a senior administration official said the Trump RX website will hopefully be launched early next year. Chris Klump, the Deputy Administrator of Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, said drugs would be made available always at lower prices than current. But this is great. because we're always worried about the drug prices. Trump sent requests to 16 other drug makers beyond Pfizer to comply with his executive order, but whether they will follow suit is unclear. Some companies told The Hill they're in conservation with the administration, in conversation with the administration.
So again, Trump is using the market
the big winner
to accomplish his goals. He's saying you're not lowering drug prices enough. You're trying to stymie legislation to force you to bring down drug prices. I'm going to go into competition with you.
Right.
And Trump is setting up his own federal government website to sell drugs directly to the American people.
Wow, what does he know about business, right?
And incredible. And,
and he also said, I would argue that is not that we are not the only winner. I think who else is a winner is American innovation and American economy. You know, this is a great businessman. This is what he does, right? Polls show younger voters swinging to the right. This we should have did after Roxana. Poll after poll shows that America's youngest voters are embracing conservatism and the Republican Party. This is a generation that came of age with the COVID-19 pandemic and have never known a world without social media, climate change, or war. But while only 36% of the people under 30 vote for Trump in 16 or in 20, that number jumped to 43. That's amazing. It jumped to 43% in 24.
That's probably going to be a majority soon.
Wow. I mean, we're going to hold, conservatives are going to hold office for a long time if this is true.
Particularly with the stories I covered earlier about the House. If you eliminate race-based reapportionment, you're going to cost the Democrats a lot of seats. And in addition, if we throw illegal aliens out of the country...
There's less.
What?
Then there's also less.
Then there's less.
Yeah.
And as a result of that reapportionment, plus Trump's popularity and his ability to solve these problems, I think you may be looking at generations of Republican control of the House. John McLaughlin issued a study that said the U.S. was divided into two different media audiences. Recent headlines have fueled concern, the Kirk assassination and others, the rise of Mamdani in New York. But together these stories reinforce the sense of the left that the left is trying to push America in the wrong direction. But they're encouraging signs for Republicans. Only 35% believe the country is on the right track, while 57% say it's on the wrong track. And Republicans lead the congressional ballot generically by 47 to 41, while Trump continues to have a job approval of 50. These numbers point to a growing Republican advantage, but they also highlight two critical trends shaping American politics. First, voters are dividing into three separate media silos, each with its own version of reality. They used to say you're entitled to your own opinion, but not your own facts.
You're entitled to your ridiculous opinion.
But not to your own facts. But now we're finding that the left has its own facts. 33% follow left-to-center outlets like CNN, MSNBC, Bloomberg, or CNBC.
Oh, my God.
35% rely on right-of-center outlets like Newsmax, Fox News, and Fox Business. And 34% consume little or no cable news at all.
They're the happiest, probably.
Voters are no longer debating the same set of facts. Instead, their perceptions of issues, particularly the economy, depend heavily on which universe they inhabit. Right-of-center voters are more optimistic. 57% say the economy is improving. But left-of-center, 76% say that it's worsening. And non-news consumers, 67%, say it's getting worse. Overall, 82% of voters report being harmed by inflation, with nearly half struggling to catch up. While left-leaning media stoke recession fears, right-leaning outlets highlight positive economic indicators, leading their audiences to greater optimism. The lesson is clear. Only voters who hear a fuller, balanced view of the news are optimistic about America's future. Those confined to liberal echo chambers or detached from the news altogether are increasingly anxious and pessimistic. For Republicans and President Trump, this is both a challenge and an opportunity. This is John McLaughlin speaking. The challenge lies in breaking through the media silos that distort reality and fuel division. The opportunity is that when voters do hear the facts about economic progress, tax cuts, and Republican leaderships, they're more hopeful and more likely to support the GOP. It's time to ensure more Americans get the truth, not filtered through echo chambers, but through a fair, direct presentation of the facts. That's how optimism will spread and how the Republicans will continue to build momentum going into 2026.
So what it is basically is when the economy is doing well under Republicans, the Dems and the media, they want to say it's horrible, there's a lot more going on, you should know about fascism, whatever they say, fascism, white supremacy, right? So instead of them saying, wow, it's actually pretty good right now, let's get our party to think a little more like them if the economy is going to do better. But they don't. They want to get their party back in so the economy goes in the crapper.
Now, one of the measures that they're doing is raising the minimum wage. Go ahead.
It's because since Newsom imposed $20 an hour minimum wage for fast food workers in the state, California has lost close to 20,000 such jobs. That's nearly 25% of the country's fast food job losses during the same period. These grim statistics should be a wake-up call for Newsom and other policymakers pushing for drastic wage hikes that will cause unintended consequences. The Examiner report noted Newsom was all smile 2 years ago when he signed the Fast Recovery Act, creating this problem, but it's actually left behind big losses. Trump declares armed conflict with Latin drug cartels. He's declared that the United States is now at war with drug cartels deemed by the White House as a terrorist group. Trump determined that the United States is a non-international armed conflict with these designated terrorist organizations. The president directed the Department of War to conduct operations against them pursuant to the law armed conflict. New York Times, doesn't matter. He's going after them, and that's what they're doing.
And Petro, the president of Colombia, has threatened to retaliate and called on U.S. troops to disobey the president's order.
In New York City, and
did that on 49th Street and New York Avenue.
He's got some set, boy. Anyway, Dick Morris.
A federal judge has killed the offshore oil drilling ban.
The ban.
We're now not allowed to drill for oil in the Atlantic or the Pacific Ocean or much of the Gulf of America. But now a federal judge has thrown that out, saying Biden overstepped his authority and saying the executive branch has the right to open the coastlines to offshore drilling.
You know, Dick, it seems like we have some adults now giving some orders, and we have to go soon, but thank God for the adults and the Donald Trumps.
And for the kids, by the way.
Yeah.
The younger generation is now more conservative.
Right.
And the more they see as stuff improves, they're going to become more and more conservative.
We'll get Roxana on that next week also.
Yeah, we will.
Again. It was an honor to be here with you, Dick Morris. And thank you for combing your hair for the radio. All right. Grazie.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
No. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
No. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to The Dick Morris Show. You can hear The Dick Morris Show Sundays at noon. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?